What's up, YouTube? Ross O'Loughlin here. If you're watching this replay, obviously you might be watching this on YouTube, but we're live right now. So let's talk about today's topic. Today we are going to be diving into ads that work, right? We've been talking about traffic over the last week or two here because I've been talking with some of my private clients. And over the last year or so, like traffic has just become really weird, complicated. A lot of people who are making their traffic work prior are having issues because Facebook has changed, privacy changes, the world is changing, and things are just not working the way that they were. Number of clients have kind of got offers and they're trying to get new leads, but they don't know how are my ads working? Are they not working? Um, and it just seems like a really challenging time. So I just wanted to talk you through the framework that I have my clients use when we're talking about how do we come up with ads that work. Right now, over the last couple of videos in this series, we've kind of been talking about the traffic cube, which is the model I use when I'm helping clients get results essentially with traffic. So to make sure that we can switch over here and you can see what I'm seeing. But the traffic cube is a three-part model essentially where we look at what are the elements that go into basically making sure that your traffic system is delivering the leads that you were looking for, right? So let's switch over here. And this is part of the overall conversion engineering model, right? Where we have your offer, conversion, and then traffic is the element that we're really looking at, right? So this assumes you got something people want and you're able to convert them once you get those people into your world, right? And we're talking about how do we get more people that are going to be the right fit, right? So when we're doing that, right, when we take this traffic cube here and we blow it out, there are three dimensions to it, like we spoke about in the last video. But just to recap here, right? Number one, what we really have to have is we have to have the right strategy, right? Meaning, once we get the click, we know why we're getting the click, and we know how that click is essentially going to translate into a hot prospect or into a sale, right? This can be the funnel, it can be the strategy you're using. Are you trying to get people into an email, a long-term email funnel? You're trying to get people into, uh, uh, you know, liquidate on day zero, tripwire, and then infinity upsell funnel. Like, there's a lot of different strategies that you can use, but unless we're clear on the strategy, then the rest of it doesn't really play into it. So last time we spoke here about the high quality leads framework, which is the strategy that we're kind of diving into and is going to be the context for what we're going to talk about today, right, is the creative side, right? The second dimension of the traffic model, the traffic cube here, is creative, right? You got to have an ad that does work, right? That does the work. It does the work getting attention, getting people to engage, and getting them to click, basically, right? Now, lastly, the other dimension of the traffic model, the traffic cube here, is the medium, which is how you're going to get the ad to show up in the right place. If you're using Facebook, if you're using YouTube, if you're using Google, that's basically going to be how you use the platform, how you buy the media, right? But not every traffic strategy that this model encompasses is going to involve using a paid ads platform, right? Plenty of clients use different platforms or use different strategies, but this element of the model down here then is all about how do you get the ad in front of the right people, right? And maybe it's not you have to push buttons in Facebook, you might have to do something else, but it's about getting the ad in the right place. But today we're talking about the ad, right? Let's talk about the main thing. And we're going to be diving into the framework that I use, right? Called the Ads That Work framework. And specifically, we're going to dive into Facebook today, right? This Ad That Works framework can be repurposed into multiple mediums. It's the high level principles that every ad needs to encompass, right? But then we kind of apply those principles to the specific medium. Okay. So let's kind of this is the context for what we're talking about. Just want to kind of bring you up to speed because if we're going to be talking about ads that work, we need to understand what goes into it. Okay. Now, let's do exactly that. So, if we're talking about making an ad work, right, there are three components to an ad that we need to look at, right? Love the number 3, right? It repeats, makes good marketing use, all right, to be able to use the number 3. But it's just a great tool to be able to simplify down what do we got to modify here? What do we got to look at to see whether or not the ad is working, right? If it's not working, we need to look at these 3 dimensions to see whether or not there's something that needs to change, okay? And yes, there's a lot that goes on in an ad, but realistically, there's only 3 things that you can change, right? Number 1 is the visual elements, right? An ad has to be noticed. If an ad does not get noticed, the chances of you getting attention are really, really slim, right? The process of getting someone who's never heard of you, right, to go to your website and opt in and then read your emails starts with catching their eye, right? An absolute stranger is going to be scrolling, and out of nowhere, something is going to make them stop scrolling and pay attention, right? That could be a line of copy, or more specifically, if you're talking about Facebook or YouTube, these are very visual heavy mediums. So most likely it's going to be some sort of image. Now, this applies also to email, right? And you could be scrolling your inbox and the visual element is what's going to catch your eye. Sometimes you can create visual elements with words, emojis, whatever, but we need to catch the eye, because if we don't catch the eye, the rest of the ad is not going to work. Right? So if we are not getting enough attention on our ads, it might be because the visual element, the visual hook just isn't good enough, okay? The second component we need is the message. Right now, the message can be broken down into a number of different components. We're going to dive into this specifically today because I know you're probably curious, what's the copy? How do I write the ad? How do I come up with the script? What are the magic words I need to use to get people to fork over the cash? Right? Like, that's the idea that a lot of us think is the reality. If I could just get the right words, then people will give me money. And to a level, that is kind of true. Meaning, if you're not using the right words, you're certainly not going to have any chance of success. But there's no like secret NLP sequence that's going to get people to just like flip a button in their head and they're just going to turn into a robot and hand you their cash. That's not how it works. But what we absolutely can do here is call the person out and speak directly to what they want, right? If you just did that, for the most part, most ads would do much, much, much better, right? And then the last part here, elements that we want to look at are the next steps. Okay. For the most part, particularly if you're watching this video and you're selling some sort of education product, coaching program, you are not going to sell in the ad. Like, no one is going to read your ad and has never heard of you, and they're going to click and buy something on that first visit. Yes, it happens. Yes, it's possible. But for the most part, unless you're selling something at a very low ticket offer, right? Like, they're not going to buy the main thing that you want them to buy, which is going to be your course, your coaching program, whatever it is that makes you money. Of course, yes, you can do some sort of front-end paid traffic strategy where you're setting a low ticket thing. You can get new visitors to buy something for like $7 on the first visit, but like, you're not going to build a business selling $7 widgets unless you are in a mass market field. But even then, you're going to have other stuff to sell those people, right? But what we want to make sure is that even then, they cannot buy from the ad. They're going to have to click that thing and move through to the next page. There are some e-commerce situations where they can literally buy on the platform, but for the most part, if you're selling education, you're going to have to get them to your website, where they're going to have to at least fill out a form, right? And so we want to make sure that we have very clear next steps, and how we're framing the next steps in that ad are congruent to what we're trying to accomplish, right? So these are the elements that you got to look at, right? And when you're trying to make your ad work, what we got to do, number one, for the visual element, we need a pattern interrupt, right? You might have heard this term before. I'm sure you've experienced it, but a pattern interrupt is just something that makes people stop and go, what is this? Right? It's outside what they're usually expecting, right? if someone is not expecting or sees something that they're not expecting, they will stop and give it extra attention. If it fits within the filters that we have, that everything we're used to seeing, all the ads on Facebook and whatnot or YouTube, it's like ad. But if we can have a pattern interrupt visual, right, that stops or gets a little bit of attention, now we've opened the door, and that's the job of that, the visual hook. Okay. Now down here, when we're talking about the message, we're going to dive into what goes into this message, and I'm going to introduce you to what I call the 4 Ps. Right. And if you could just master these, you will be in very good shape. Because anytime I'm looking at a client's ad, right, and anytime I'm looking at their front end marketing, what's typically the case, the message isn't clear because they're not clear on the 4 Ps, or there's one element of these 4 Ps missing, right? So what are the 4 Ps? Right, very simply, right, whenever you are, the best way to think about this is your ad is a window, right? And it's a window into your world, right? And what the person is going to get if they click through, right? It needs to be a micro expression of your value proposition and what you help people do, right? And you need to meet the person where they are. They're scrolling Facebook, they don't know who you are, they don't care who you are, they just don't want to be interrupted. But we need to interrupt their world, and we need to address something super specific that is on their mind and is going to get their attention, right? And we also need to write this ad in a way where the clicks that we're going to get are clicks with intent. You can use curiosity, but going for just pure curiosity clicks, like, it's not a strategy that I personally have found to be very effective unless you have something very, very optimized on the other end. What I have found to be super effective, though, is get clicks with intent by focusing on the 4 Ps, right? So what are the 4 Ps? Very simply, the 4 Ps are the core of your message, right? The first P is the problem. What is the specific problem that you are talking about? Okay? A problem at a fundamental level, and it's really important that we unpack this, because in the world of marketing, people have different definitions of problem, and I'll say, what's the problem you solve? And they'll start talking about pain points, or they start talking about their process and the outcomes they get. We need to be super clear. A problem is a scenario where your target market is trying to do something, or they want to do something, and they can't do it, right? They're trying to accomplish something and they are not getting the outcomes that they're looking for. They're either failing, they're frustrated, they're trying to do the thing and they don't know how to do it, or their current way of doing it is not adequate, right? We need to be super clear about what is the problem, right? And we need to be clear about it in 2 dimensions, right? Number one, what do they think the problem is? And what do we know the problem actually is? Right? And until you are clear about not just these 2 elements, but how they're different, it's going to be very hard to write an ad that's going to get people's attention. I see this all the time. People write ads, and what do? They start writing about this. They start writing about the problem that from their perspective, from the business owner's perspective. And that's just it's going to go straight over the person's head, because if they understood what the problem actually was, they'd have solved it already. And we need to meet them where they are, which is what's the problem from their perspective. And then from there, we can talk about, the reason you failed is because this isn't actually the problem. This is the problem, right? But we need to be super clear about the problem first, because if we're not clear about the problem, then the whole point of the ad, the whole point of your offer is just not going to be relevant, right? And we want to attract people that are dealing with the problem that you solve for them, right? So that's P number 1. P number 2 is pain. Okay? Pain is why your market is going to take you up on your offer, for the most part, right? People are massively motivated to move away from pain, right? Pain are the symptoms that people experience that they don't like because they have a problem, right? If your leg is broken, the problem is your joint or your bones are disjointed, but the pain you feel is the massive shock of electric pain up the side of your leg when you put weight on it. That's what you want to go away. But it's not going away until you solve the problem. But we need to be very, very clear about the pain points here that the market is experiencing, right? And also, again, from their perspective. Okay. And what we're going to say is, yo, you're experiencing these. And the reason for that is you think it's this, but instead, it's actually this. That is the whole core of the ad, of any ad that I have found that works. If you're not super clear on that, and if you're not addressing a problem that they want solved, or if you're not framing it from their perspective, you're just not going to get people paying attention, because people only pay attention to the problems that they want solved or that they have on their mind, for the most part, right? There's always exceptions in marketing, but this is the core framework that if you haven't got your ads working, you should probably think about this, okay? The next P, the possibility, right? Going back to this idea, an ad is a window, and you want to say, hey, you are currently in this situation, right? And you are experiencing these problems. All of these problems are because you're doing things the wrong way, okay? And if you do things a different way, this is what's possible, right? This is where you paint the picture of the outcomes that they are looking for. Okay, several ways to do this. You can do it with proof. You can do it by describing their reality, that their hopes, fears, or their hopes and dreams in articulate detail. There's a bunch of different ways you do it, right? But you also want to talk about what is possible, right? What if they follow your instruction, what is possible? What I love to do is I love to say, hey, what are the results your clients are getting? Can we extrapolate some of those? Can we extract them? And can we put them in the ad, right? To demonstrate to people this is what's possible when you solve this problem, right? Now, again, none of this is like if you've been to copywriting 101, you probably have heard a lot of these terms. But I'm telling you, if you want your ads to work, it's not going to be some super secret copywriting strategy that's going to get them to work. What's going to get them to work is you being hyper clear on these 4 things. And we're going to get into the last part here, right? But specifically, this part here is how you're going to meet the market where they are, right? And then the last P here is the process. And this is where you introduce your solution. Okay? And when we say your solution, it's your way of doing things. So in this example, if we look at this, just apply it to my business, right? The problem people have is they're trying to sell online courses, but they don't want it. They hate the way they're forced to do it because they're told you have to launch. And that's the only way they have found that works. They might have tried an evergreen funnel, but that didn't really work and get them the consistency that they're looking for. So they're experiencing a bunch of pain because they don't enjoy the way that they sell their products. So the pain they experience is empty bank account and all the fear and insignificance around that. Like, oh my God, I'm a failing entrepreneur. This last launch was an absolute disaster. Like my life is about to implode. They're totally burnt out and exhausted after the launch. They're like, oh my God, why do I have to work so hard to make all these sales appear? Like, can't this just be on, like, do I have to do this like all the time? Right? There's a lot of shame and guilt. Sometimes they're using the launch strategies as it relates to like manipulating people and using fake deadlines and like all this other stuff. A lot of that is the pain. That's the stuff that people want to go away. But the problem is how they're selling the stuff, right? So the possibility is, yo, you can make your business open every day, and you can sell every day, and you can have consistent people coming in, right? And you could do it in a way that feels awesome. Check out A, B, and C. And the way you do this is by following this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-step process, system, solution called Open Every Day, right? That is the fundamental structure of nearly every ad I have written, right? There's variation. Maybe you might use one story versus another. But if your ad isn't converting, I'm telling you, it's probably because that argument is not clear. And if you're not clear on that argument, the rest doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what copywriting tactics you use or what optimization funnel, clicks funnel, upsells you're doing. If you're not calling out the people who are super hyper targeted about the problem you solve and the pain points they experience, the rest isn't really going to work, right? And this is the 4 Ps, right? And if you can get super clear on this, it's going to make everything so much easier, right? The last part then is then you just get into next steps, i.e., what are they going to do next and how do they take action? And this is where you basically say, hey, if you want to apply this process, if you want to learn about this process, you are basically going to tease however you are framing your process. Maybe that's, hey, I've got this system and it shows you how to do this thing, or the system's in a book, or you can get a free training, or you can download a PDF, or here's the worksheet. You are basically giving them something tangible, right? You're giving them something tactical, right? And say, go here and get it. If you're going for a front end sale, it's like, hey, learn more about this problem here. The next step is to like go and check out the sales page. You're not going to say it in those ways, but it's like, hey, if you're looking for the framework, you can go and learn about it here, and then they'll purchase on that page. But what you were doing with the next steps is you're basically teasing and saying, this is the process that is going to deliver the possibility, and if you want it, you need to go here and take this action. Okay. Now, I'm telling you, if your ads are not working, it's not because you haven't got the right funnel hack ninja stuff. It's because you're not clear on the 4 Ps. You haven't got a good enough visual hook that interrupts people, or the next steps, right? The next steps or the way you position the process just isn't appealing enough. Those are pretty much the only ways your marketing, your ad is not going to work. And if you can nail those down, you'll get an awful lot better results. All right. So with that in mind, if you would like some help getting this sorted in your business, if you'd like me or someone from my team to take a look at how you're advertising, to take a look at your Facebook ads, your landing pages, your opt-ins, your follow-up, and see, hey, like where are the ads working, right? Like, does this message, does the 4 Ps fit into this? Are we hitting the right notes? If you'd like us to take a look, go through and see what's working and what's not, to see what we can spot, you can have us do that, right? We put a lot of free content out here, but if you want some help, best way to do it is to request a free mystery shop review, right? Which basically someone from me and my team will take a look at your stuff. We'll see, hey, number one, is there any suggestions and reviews and improvements that we would suggest that you can do? And if you want to take those improvements and improve, like run with them yourself, awesome, fantastic. If you want our help with it, that's something that you can also get, and we'd be delighted to work with you. But if not, no harm, no foul, right? But the only way to get our help is to request a mystery shop review, because we just want to see, hey, are you even good fit for a client? But if you're not, like, we're not going to move you forward into the rest of the process. But if you are, maybe we can help you find the bottleneck in your system, and show you how to fix it, and just start helping to hit those growth numbers that you're looking for by just tweaking a few of the things in your funnel, start improving those conversion numbers. So if that's something you're interested in, go below this video. There's a link to request a mystery shop review. I only do a handful of these every so often, so if there's one available, go and grab it right now. Otherwise, if you have any questions about the 4 Ps framework, drop them below, and I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is Ross O'Loughlin. Thank you for tuning in.